I've been thinking pretty constantly ever since chapter 22 of Two Blue Vortex dropped. And while there are a lot of things to consider and think about right now in Two Blue Vortex, the one thing I cannot get out of my mind is the fact that Jura was able to negate Rasengan Uzuhiko. I've stewed on it, I've theorized about it, and yet I just can't seem to come to an answer that I enjoy. Because while yes, we understand how Jura was able to negate Rasengan Uzuhiko, as he said it was similar to that of his Tailed Beast Bomb, what does that really mean? A Tailed Beast Bomb is an 8-to-2 ratio of positive to negative chakra used by tailed beasts with an almost infinite amount of power that can be drawn into them, assuming who's ever using them is able to balance that 8-to-2 ratio regardless of how big the ball gets. What could that possibly have to do with a new form of Rasengan that allows for Boruto to tap into the rotational power of the Earth? And this question gets exponentially harder to answer when you consider the fact that all of the forces in play here, be they negative, positive, or the Earth's chakra, are all concepts that have yet to be explained to us in any meaningful capacity. But after stewing on the events of chapter 22 for a while now, I think I've finally come to an answer. Well, 3 possible answers that are all kind of tied to each other. And I believe once and for all, I may finally be able to answer the question of why was Jura actually able to negate Rasengan Uzuhiko? And thus today, we're talking Jura's way more broken than we even realized. But before we get to talking about how insanely powerful Jura is, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you guys want to see one additional NC Hammer 23 video a week, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the 4th wall link in my description below. We are on to the Forest of Death. So, before we get to talking about how Jura was able to negate Rasengan Uzuhiko, let's set the stage here a little bit. So, for those of you who don't remember exactly how chapter 22 of Two Blue Vortex ended, basically after being nabbed up with Jura's wood release, Boruto was able to free himself, plant his 2 feet on the ground to briefly draw in Earth's energy, and was able to hit Jura with one of the weaker Rasengan Uzuhiko that we've seen. See, because Rasengan Uzuhiko is one of the only jutsu in the Naruto universe that seems to need a charging period, which in itself actually does make Rasengan Uzuhiko eerily similar to that of the Tailed Beast Ball. Because if there is truly one identifiable connection between the Rasengan Uzuhiko and the Tailed Beast Ball, it's the fact that both the Rasengan Uzuhiko and the Tailed Beast Ball technically have an infinite power ceiling. That is to say that whoever or whatever is using either of these 2 jutsu with enough time and enough finesse and skill is able to technically dump infinite power into it. A Tailed Beast Ball can be as big or as small as you want it. Jura is able to make Tailed Beast Balls into sniper bullets that don't explode. Naruto is able to make handheld Tailed Beast Balls before he mastered his relationship with Kurama, but then again, we've seen Tailed Beast Balls so big, fired from things like the Ten Tails in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, that they were able to wipe out the entire Shinobi Alliance headquarters in just one blow. And the same principle applies to the Rasengan Uzuhiko. When it was used against Code and most recently against Jura, well, it did have some of the percussive force of a standard Rasengan. The percussive force of the blow paled in comparison to the Rasengan Uzuhiko that was hit against Hidari that completely eviscerated his entire body. And the only difference between those 3 Rasengan Uzuhiko is how much time Boruto had to charge them. However, there is one similarity amongst all of those hits of Rasengan Uzuhiko, and that is the secondary and possibly more important effect that comes along with being hit by Uzuhiko, which is its perpetual nauseating effect. See, because the Rasengan Uzuhiko uses a combination of the user's chakra and the planet's chakra, which manifests as the power of the planet's rotation and orbit, accessing the centrifugal forces of a spinning globe. When somebody is hit with Rasengan Uzuhiko, they become eternally aware of the fact that they are on a spinning planet. And thus, because a planet never stops spinning, so long as they are not released from Rasengan Uzuhiko or released themselves, they will be nauseated and debilitated by the spinning of the globe until eventually they die. You literally get nauseated to death, like me the morning after somebody decided that it was a good idea to drink soju last night. It was me. However, if you're able to release yourself, or if you're released by Boruto from the effects of Rasengan Uzuhiko, kind of like going to bottomless brunch after a hard night out, you're able to escape the eternal nausea, you know, until you get hit by it again. But that is unfortunately basically everything that we know about Rasengan Uzuhiko. And in chapter 22, after only being hit with it briefly, Jura was able to deduce that the Rasengan Uzuhiko was eerily similar to that of his Tailed Beast Ball. And thus he was able to, simply by patting his chest, to release himself from the nauseating effects of the Uzuhiko. But why? Why would the Tailed Beast Ball be anything like the Rasengan Uzuhiko? I mean, yeah, we've established the fact that both of them have no ceiling on how powerful they can be, and they both require charging time, but that's not enough for Jura to immediately identify how Uzuhiko works and break it. And today, with the help of a Reddit post by a user called AI Generated 9460, I came to realize that Rasengan Uzuhiko and Tailed Beast Balls have more in common than the fact that they both can be infinitely powerful. See, because both Rasengan Uzuhiko and Tailed Beast Balls are about balance. See, the creation of a tailed beast ball is a delicate dance. Add in too much or too little positive or negative chakra, and the tailed beast ball either doesn't work or blows up in your face. It is an incredibly delicate process, like disarming a bomb, or I guess, arming a bomb. But once you're able to perfect that balance, you gain access to an incredibly powerful jutsu. And Rasengan Uzuhiko may operate under the same principle. See, Rasengan Uzuhiko also operates around the concept of balance, except instead of balancing chakra types like positive and negative, it's able to tap into and therefore affect other people's natural planetary force balance. See, the reason that you and I don't feel the fact that we are currently spinning at 1,000 miles an hour is because A, gravity, and B, because we've always been spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. However, if one day the Earth were to just stop, every single one of us would fly 1,000 miles an hour into the nearest wall. It's like the great James May once said, speed has never killed anybody. However, the loss of speed has. And thus, Rasengan Uzuhiko seemingly works in a somewhat psychological way, where those hit by it are almost separated from the centrifugal forces of the Earth, going from a person unaware of the fact that they're traveling 1,000 miles an hour in a circle to now more akin to a person on the world's largest gravitron after eating 2 to 3 pounds of fair food. See, by separating people from their natural connection to the Earth's chakra and its rotational force, people hit by Rasengan Uzuhiko lose access to a balance of natural energy that they've had their entire lives. A balance on a tightrope every single human has been walking unknowingly. And thus Jura, after being hit by Rasengan Uzuhiko, realized that this jutsu, much like his tailed beast ball, is all about balance. And thus the connection was made. And that's all well and good, you say, but Nick, how did he nullify it? Well, there's really 3 possible ways, and all 3 of them make Jura a much more intimidating threat than he already was, which is kind of hard to do when you consider the fact that he is currently the strongest person in Boruto's universe. So let's break down these 3 semi-distinct possibilities, and let's keep in mind here that all 3 of these possibilities can be true simultaneously. Well, the first way that Jura was possibly able to negate the power of Rasengan Uzuhiko is through the power of chakra harmonization. That is to say that after Jura was hit with Rasengan Uzuhiko, and thus if our theory is correct that Rasengan Uzuhiko is able to separate you from your connection to Earth's chakra and therefore make you feel the rotation of the Earth as you exist as a kind of alien body on this spinning rock now, Jura was essentially able to use some form of chakra harmonization to reconnect himself to Earth's chakra. And this is an interesting idea. See, because in a way, if this is what Jura did to nullify the effects of Rasengan Uzuhiko, it kind of proves in a sense that he, like Boruto, has access to Earth's chakra. That Jura is, like Boruto, able to use this power of the rotation of the Earth, maybe not in an offensive way like Boruto, but at least in a way that allows him to stabilize his own energy. And I believe this is why there's been so much attention paid to the fact that the Earth's chakra is not nature energy. Because while the idea that the Shinju were some kinds of sages wouldn't be all that crazy, considering the fact that they are literally trees, and therefore not only have obvious connections to nature energy, but also one of the most prominent sages of all time, Hashirama, I think the real reason that there's been a big separation between Earth's chakra and nature chakra is so when it's established that Jura is able to access Earth's chakra like Boruto, Ikimoto doesn't have to try to dive into some kind of rabbit hole as he has to skirt around the fact that the Shinju should have access to some form of sage mode and therefore should be even stronger. So all that is to say that Uzuhiko was able to separate Jura from his connection to Earth's energy, kind of like Doctor Strange trying to get back to his body, because of Jura's ability to balance positive and negative chakras at a perfect ratio to use his tailed beast balls. This delicate, almost monk-like connection to the balancing of forces in the Naruto universe that Jura has because of the tailed beast balls allowed for him to identify his severing from Earth's energy and find a way to reattach himself, which is terrible news for Boruto, because if the Rasengan Uzuhiko just kind of operates like a Rasengan that flips off your switch of connection to the Earth's chakra, and Jura knows where the switch is and how to flip it back on, that means that the Uzuhiko is just now basically a Rasengan, and it's already been shown that the Rasengan does next to no damage to Jura, which starts to give a lot of credence to the idea that Kashin Koji has already identified that Boruto cannot win this fight against Jura. However, what if Rasengan Uzuhiko doesn't sever your connection to Earth's chakra? That is to say, what if every person on Earth isn't walking around with some inherent connection to Earth's rotational power? And rather, when Rasengan Uzuhiko hits somebody, instead of severing some imaginary line you have tied to the ground, it works actually more akin to something we see rather often in the Naruto universe, Genjutsu. See, the principle for how Genjutsu works in the Naruto universe is that if you have precise enough chakra control, you are able to use the preciseness of your chakra control to manipulate the 5 senses of a person you're trying to place under Genjutsu. This is why people like Sakura were stated to be possibly some of the greatest Genjutsu users of all time, as Sakura's universe best chakra control would mean that if she wanted to switch from medical ninjutsu to just being a Genjutsu based ninja, she would be able to, with her superior chakra control, basically place anybody under Genjutsu, which is also why she's all but impervious to any Genjutsu, as nobody and nothing has better chakra control than her, and therefore in a proverbial chakra control tug of war, they can't beat Sakura. So what if Rasengan Uzuhiko operates in a principle similar to that of Genjutsu? Rather than severing some kind of outside factor that scrambles the internals of the person hit with the Uzuhiko actually skips the idea of affecting some outside factor and just scrambles the internal of who's ever been affected by it. See, chakra flow has been identified as a massively important thing in Naruto time and time again, especially when talking about Genjutsu, as it's often identified that the best way to break somebody out of Genjutsu is to fire chakra into their system by placing a hand somewhere on their body to disrupt their chakra flow and essentially jumpstart their chakra network. And thus, by disrupting this chakra flow, which is being altered by the Genjutsu, this will effectively break somebody out of Genjutsu. This is why perfect Jinchuriki are supposed to be invulnerable to Genjutsu, as the tailed beast inside of the Jinchuriki is able to restart the chakra flow of their Jinchuriki really whenever. But if we now know that Genjutsu has the ability to alter somebody's chakra flow and therefore alter how they perceive the world, it wouldn't be crazy to assume that Rasengan Uzuhiko also scrambles somebody's chakra flow and their chakra network's ability to pass chakra to the right parts of the body. And therefore Uzuhiko could kind of just work like a physically based Genjutsu that makes you super dizzy. It's not a new concept at all. The realm of drunken dreams, the sake gourd that Itachi kept his sword of Totsuka in with his Susanoo, is an entire pocket dimension that does exactly this. It casts a Genjutsu on you that makes you nauseated for the rest of time, or so ever as long as you spend in the realm of drunken dreams. And as we previously established, that the usage of Genjutsu is a delicate chakra balance, a proverbial tug of war between the person casting the Genjutsu and the person having the Genjutsu cast on them. This could also tie into the idea of why Jura said that the Uzuhiko is eerily similar to that of the tailed beast ball, as the chakra control required to alter somebody's perception of the world in a Genjutsu-like fashion is similar to that of the chakra control required to make a tailed beast ball. And thus the way that Jura may have been able to break himself out of Uzuhiko is something we've seen dozens if not hundreds of times. I mean, after all, Jura did place his own hand on his own chest and effectively shot Uzuhiko out of his back. By firing chakra into his own chakra system using his hand, Jura could have effectively given his chakra network a jump start and broke himself out of the effects of Rasengan Uzuhiko. Now, some of you may not like that possible explanation on account of the fact that it boils Rasengan Uzuhiko's most deadly side effect down to effectively being a Genjutsu that can be broken, but it's important to note here that Jura is only able to break himself out of this potential Genjutsu-like trance because of his ability to use the tailed beast ball, which I find slightly ironic when you consider the fact that perfect Jinchuriki are often talked about as being impervious to Genjutsu, and the only people and or things that are able to pull off tailed beast balls are Jinchuriki and their respective tailed beasts. And thus doesn't it seem odd that Jura's connection to the tailed beast, his tailed beast balls, is what makes him immune to the Rasengan Uzuhiko, when the tailed beasts and their respective Jinchuriki are the most notable people in the Naruto universe with an immunity to Genjutsu. It's just something to chew on. And so is our third and final, at least so far as I see it, possible explanation as to how Jura was able to break himself out of Rasengan Uzuhiko, which is simply that he's a Shinju. See, Jura is technically a sentient god tree mixed with a ten tails, and as the power of the Rasengan Uzuhiko comes from the Earth's chakra, Jura, as a sentient divine tree whose sole purpose is usually to absorb the chakra of an entire planet and create a chakra fruit to be consumed by the Otsutsuki, should have a pretty powerful, pertinent, and pre-existing connection to the Earth's chakra. See, Boruto being able to tap into the power of the Earth's chakra is kind of confusing because nothing about his character has ever really shown us that he would be able to do that. However, if the Shinju were to pull out some Earth chakra move, now that would make sense. I mean, the Shinju themselves come from malformed divine trees trees. So if anybody was going to be able to hack into the Earth's chakra to use it offensively or defensively, it would make a fair amount of sense that the beings that were created from trees, literally meant to soak up a planet's chakra, would be the entities to figure that out. And thus Jura and the rest of the Shinju may just be naturally resistant to techniques that use the planet's chakra and its rotational energy, as they themselves are pseudo products of that energy. And while the natural argument to make here is that Hidari was blown away with the Rasengan Uzuhiko, it's important to note here that even after Hidari was blown away by the Rasengan Uzuhiko, he wasn't affected by the nauseating effect of it. Sure, all that was left of Hidari was his soul thorn, and he had to be completely reconstructed, and thus that could be a pretty good reason as to why he wasn't affected by the nauseating effects of the Rasengan Uzuhiko, but still, he was unaffected. And that is an important fact when trying to figure out exactly what is going on with Uzuhiko and how it could possibly be negated. But when it comes down to it, all three of these answers could very easily be correct simultaneously. Rasengan Uzuhiko could very easily cut people off from their connection to the Earth's chakra. And kind of like when people are training in Sage mode, maintaining a delicate balance of pulling in nature energy, mixing it with your own chakra, and creating Genjutsu chakra is vital for everybody's day-to-day existence. And thus every single living being on Earth may subconsciously pull in the Earth's chakra and mingle it with their own energy. And thus, like how people training in Mount Muabuko can pull in too much nature energy and turn themselves into stones, that delicate mix of Earth's energy and your own being disrupted could have potential incredibly negative effects on your own chakra circulatory system, putting you in a Genjutsu-like trance where you're nauseated to eventually the point of death. I mean, it's been established multiple times that chakra is a life force. Bring in too much of a certain kind of chakra, you can turn yourself into a stone. Run out of chakra and you die. And thus having your chakra circulatory system altered can lead to fatal consequences. But Jura's ability to immediately deduce his severed connection to the Earth's chakra, and therefore his jumbled chakra circulatory system, could come from the fact that he is a sentient divine tree, an entity inherently connected to the Earth's chakra. And thus all three of these answers working together can serve as an incredibly competent answer to why Jura was able to nullify Uzuhiko. But ultimately the why isn't all that important. All that matters is that Jura can nullify Uzuhiko, which means that Boruto is SOL and probably has some serious training on the horizon. Otherwise, even with Kawaki's help, Jura isn't going anywhere. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. Why do you believe Jura was able to nullify the Uzuhiko of Boruto? Let me know in the comments below, and while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna go take a nap.